Finally, the World Cup is over. Finally, anyone who isn't living in the same time zone as Qatar can actually get some sleep, myself included. But there's one more thing we need to do. One more thing. And that is rank every single team in the World Cup. This will be part one, and we're going in reverse order. Number 32 will be first. And we're basically going from number 32 to number 25 today in part one of the series. And 32, about 10 years ago, I lived in a house with a lot of other people. We had lots of housemates. It was wonderful. We had parties all the time and loads of fun. And we had one new housemate move in. We had a big housewarming party for her. But she brought over a bunch of her friends who were not from where I was from. They were from out of town. And they completely trashed the house, stole all our beers. And how this relates to number 32 is I feel like that's exactly what Ecuador, Senegal, and the Netherlands did to our number 32 ranked team. Qatar put on such a wonderful tournament, and what do they have to show for it? A number 32 ranking, and probably universally regarded as the worst team in the World Cup, which again, they weren't that bad. Like, they didn't get thrashed at all, really. The first game was pretty disappointing. I think they were just too nervous, and Ana Valencia was on fire. My gosh, he easily could have scored more than 2 goals. Picked themselves up, dusted themselves off, and ripped into Senegal. Great midfield performance led by their captain, Hassan Al Haidos. Akram Afif worked really, really hard. Even though I think he was just missing the actual finishing and shooting on target part of his gameplay, but he was phenomenal as well. So, their best players really stepped up, and overall they had a great performance. It took an amazing save from Edouard. A Gordon Banks on Pele 1970 World Cup type save. If you know the one I'm talking about, you know how good it was. Just absolutely phenomenal. Against a really, really strong defense led by Kalidou Koulibaly and Edouard Mendy, who I mentioned. They kept banging on the door, and they scored a freaking goal. And what a great moment. And thank God, because, we've had host nations who maybe wouldn't have qualified for the World Cup in the past. I'd say maybe only one, being South Africa. But South Africa, they ripped in. They were phenomenal from the opening game. They had a great World Cup, even though they didn't make it out of the group stage. But they still had a great World Cup, great performance in what was still a really tough group. It took Mexico's captain and frankly best player, Rafael Marquez, to step up and equalise after an absolute screamer of a goal in the opener. South Africa did great in their, host nation run of 2010. And although I think this Qatar team probably isn't quite as good as that team anyway, thank God they still got their goal. And it sounds really patronising of me to say that because they did lose every game. But ultimately they got their goal against a really strong defensive side in Senegal. And frankly, losing 2-0 to the Netherlands, after the whole World Cup sort of played out, after we saw the Netherlands, in the round of 16 in the quarterfinals, actually looks pretty good. There's no goals, but hey, they only conceded 2 goals. A very strong defensive side from Argentina only conceded 2 goals in the quarterfinals as well. And we know how well Argentina also turned out during this World Cup. So overall, they should be really proud of that, really proud of their goal. And I'm going to stop being so patronising towards our wonderful host Qatar and just move on to number 31. Well, this team, however, I think Qatar, frankly, are on the way up. And especially with 48 teams heading into the next tournament, I think even though they won't be the hosts, I think Qatar will still qualify. There will be a few more slots open for Asian teams, and I think Qatar are going to gladly gobble one of those spots up for themselves. And we'll see those guys take on the tournament again. The next team, though, even though it's expanding to 48 teams, I'll put it down right now, our number 31 ranked team is not going to qualify for the next World Cup. Even with a lot more spots going to Europe, I'm going to guess probably at least half a dozen more spots going to Europe, in fact. I'd say Wales' best years are now behind them. Gareth Bale won't be there, and a lot of their other top players won't be there either. But let's focus on the positives. They do come in at number 31. They're not last. And frankly, I think Group B were actually one of the stronger groups in the World Cup as well. And especially after that first half against the Americans, honestly, they did really well to hold them to 1-0. It was a tough first half for them. A wonderfully skilled, talented American side led by this wonderful midfield. And couple of great wingers with Timothy Ware and, of course, Captain America, Christian Pulisic. It looked like it was going to blow out, but I'll tell you what, the second half, they must have had some sort of speech at halftime. My gosh, they came out, they really stepped up. Their midfield decided to really step up and just took over against the Americans. And all of a sudden, Wales were fighting back, and they fought for every inch, every ball. And eventually, that ball came through into the box. It was Zimmerman, it was Bale, it was a foot race, and Zimmerman caught Gareth Bale instead of the ball, and in a desperate challenge. And honestly, that was just the pressure valve finally bursting, and Gareth Bale, of course, steps up and kicks the goal for Wales to level it up against what was a very good American side. Thought they were good heading into the tournament, but even better than what I thought they were. And that was the highlight, honestly. Not great over the next two games. And that's what really sends them down to number 31. Against Iran, yeah, the goals came towards the end of the game for Iran, but Iran really deserved that win. I mean, granted, it's a really, really strong Iranian team, possibly the best Iranian team of all time. Azmoun and Terimay were both starting in this game as well, so it was probably overall a better Iranian team than the one that played England and got thrashed by England 6-2. But yeah, ultimately in this game, the first goal was really through defensive mistakes. They could not get rid of the ball. And it was a shame they had no more of that Kiefer Moore sort of magic from the first game, which I just want to shout out as well. That back heel that almost set up a goal against the USA. Oh, forgive the tangent, but that was gorgeous. My God, Kiefer Moore, what a discovery he was. But again, they never really found that magic again. Lost 2-0 to Iran. And, of course, ended with a huge derby game against England, which was very cool that England were drew with Wales. But, again, not so cool for the Welsh. They really struggled against England. But to be fair, I mean, I think, England, the USA, both looked really strong in the knockout stages as well. They got drawn in a tough group. But ultimately, yeah, 31 suits them. And unfortunately, I don't think Wales will qualify for the next World Cup. I'm throwing it out there. Europe have got loads of strong teams. I mean, look at Hungary this year. Geez, Hungary were phenomenal. Like, Italy will surely that this time they'll qualify for the World Cup. There's a lot of great teams from Europe, and I think it's going to be really tough for Wales to qualify for the next World Cup, quite frankly. And I think they're the only team from this World Cup who will not qualify for the next expanded version of the World Cup. So, on to number 30. And frankly, the fact this team made it to number 30 is staggering to me. I literally saw their first game and it was very obvious. I was like, okay, cool. Well, the one thing keeping this player in there, the one player keeping this team in the tournament is their goalkeeper. And if their goalkeeper lets in 7 goals in the first game against a team who isn't necessarily known for their attack, I think more known for their midfield and their defense. I was like, there's no hope. I'll start the video now, honestly. We'll just fill out number 32. It's definitely going to be Costa Rica. But tell you what, they climbed to the dizzying heights of number 30. I don't know, that's still not very high, but still they did really well. I mean, the fact that this tournament had so much depth, the bottom teams I think were closer to the best teams in the tournament, more than possibly any other World Cup in history. And yeah, Costa Rica, man, they shocked me after that first game. I mean, the first game shocked me. The fact that Keylor Navas let in 7 goals was staggering. Although, to be fair, it shows you, man, like strong defensive line will really help out a goalkeeper, and a goalkeeper can only do so much. And Spain just ran right, and then Japan got a bit cocky with their changes. Japan changed down at least half the team and ended up getting absolutely... Well, I wouldn't say they got their asses kicked, but yeah, certainly Costa Rica defended like men possessed. A very angry, very pissed off, no doubt. Keylor Navas kept him in the game the whole time, and they made the most of their pretty much one chance they had and scored. It was very similar to... there was another game in the first round of the World Cup, Belgium-Canada, which we'll get to soon. 2 teams who disappointed a little bit as well, but very similar game. I mean, my God, it was just one team absolutely hammering the other team, but just could not finish their chance, and Costa Rica made the most of their one chance. Defended like men, absolutely possessed, and they should be very proud of that. And then had a really fun game with Germany. I mean, the fact they lost, but God, for like 8 minutes they were going through to the top 16, which kind of explains how insane Group E was. I mean, God, it was fun. It's a group that on paper, for me, it looked like really straightforward. It was like, oh yeah, Germany, Spain, it'll be interesting to see who wins the group, but obviously they're the two teams will go through. I didn't rate Japan that highly heading into the World Cup. I mean, I thought they'd be decent, but I just didn't think they'd challenge Spain and Germany, who were just, full of all the players from all the best clubs in Europe. And man, just Group E was a fun one. But essentially, Costa Rica, well done. After getting thrashed in the first game, well done for climbing back to ranked number 30. And now we get to 29, and another team from CONCACAF with Canada. Who, yeah, I know, they literally came away from the group with 0 points, 0 draws, 0 wins. But they should be proud. I love the way they play. They are... They're the guy who lines up for the marathon, and at the starting line, he just sprints at the start and just goes hard. And everyone just looks at them like, okay, buddy, if you're that fast, we'll see. See how you go. And honestly, they were really unlucky to not get a point. And frankly, really unlucky to not flat out get a win against one of the teams who were genuinely, I mean, yeah, they probably looked a bit past their prime, but they still had Thibaut Courtois, they still had Kevin De Bruyne, and they still had potentially world-class players in guys like Eden Hazard and Romelu Lukaku. But I tell you what, Canada, they really outplayed them. They outplayed the Belgians the whole time in that first game. Did a great job, honestly. Alphonso Davies was fantastic, dribbling past multiple defenders on multiple occasions. And then, just such a shame he couldn't get that penalty. Granted, it was a weak penalty kick, and Courtois, you need a lot more than that to beat Courtois. He's the world's best keeper for a reason. Although that may have changed after this tournament, we'll have to see. But essentially, he's not going to get beaten by a soft penalty like that. But really, Canada and Alphonso Davies played great all through the game. They came out, they go as hard as they can at the start. They went 3-4-3 in their formation as well. They were looking for goals. I think they just wanted to make a big impact in this World Cup. And yeah, the fact they only scored 2 goals in 3 games is very surprising. Although, to be fair, in hindsight, they did go up against 2 of the best defensive teams in the world. And we didn't really know that necessarily in the group stage, but we kind of found out as the tournament went along how good their other 2 opponents would be. So in the game against Croatia, came out, first few minutes, Alphonso Davies redeems himself after missing that penalty against Courtois in the first game. Phenomenal goal to kick off things for Canada. And I'll tell you what, Canada, they really brought it. Even the trash talk before the game, saying that they were going to fuck up the Croatians. And man, it looked like they were going to do it. It's amazing. Especially with Croatia in the first game, looking like the team that we kind of expected they would, having like a great defense, phenomenal midfield. But not a lot of goal scoring potential, not a lot of finishing ability up front. But then Croatia, they weathered that early storm. Bit like the Rumble in the Jungle, if you know the Ali Foreman boxing match from the 70s, where Ali kind of just weathered the storm from Foreman, and then once Foreman got worn out, then Ali would choose to attack more. And that's where Luka Modric and his team of footballing maestros really took it on themselves to really plant the flag in the ground and go, okay, you guys want to come at us hard? We're going to see how good you are. And they really put Canada to the test. And unfortunately, Canada could not pass that test against what turned out to be one of the best teams in the tournament. And the Croatians, with that midfield especially, too skillful. They really did. They challenged the Canadians to be like, okay, well, if you can take the ball off us, you can win this game. But yeah, the lion's share of possession went to Croatia in that game. That phenomenal midfield, and yeah, we all know what happened. 4-1 to Croatia. Now Canada just looking for anything. And again, unlucky for them, taking on Morocco, who at the time were just like, oh yeah, Morocco are playing pretty good. There you go. But even then, I don't know if people were thinking they were Africa's great chance to make the top 4 at that time. I think the comments after the Moroccan-Belgian game, which happened at the same time as the Croatian-Canada game, was more like, oh, don't Belgium suck now. God, they're terrible. Not so much like, wow, Morocco actually have like a really good defense and they're really hard to score against. And you know what? Canada freaking did it. They scored another goal, and they scored it against Morocco, who were just an amazing defensive team the whole tournament. And they should be proud of that. I mean, they went hard, and they just ended up getting in, I think, a group that, I mean, outside of Belgium, obviously were just a little bit tougher than what people actually thought heading into the tournament. So it brings us number 28, and number 28 really shows the uniqueness of the World Cup. If you have a weakness somewhere, you can't just go out and buy someone. You know, if you need a striker, you can't just hit up Erling Haaland and just be like, hey, bro, you want to come down and play for us? We'll give you a ton of money for it. It doesn't work like that. And poor old number 28, man, did they need a striker. Like, honestly, really solid team. Still played disappointingly, in my opinion. But Denmark, God, they need a striker. Like, world class, honestly. You'd never know it from the first half of their first game against Tunisia. Tunisia dominated that. I think Tunisia probably played better than what a lot of people thought anyway. So, yeah, it's partly Tunisia just playing really well. But yeah, Denmark, this should have been, heading into the tournament, this was one of the easiest groups, I think. And France and Denmark looked like they would have a cakewalk through to the top 16. And Denmark took a long time to wake up against Tunisia. When they did, they looked fantastic, honestly. Second half, they really turned things around, completely dominated, but could not get that goal. My gosh. And honestly, they should be very lucky because Kasper Schmeichel pulled off a hell of a save in the first half. But hey, 0-0. Their World Cup's still alive, and the next game against France is a bonus. You know, if they can get a point from that, fantastic. And they kind of had France's number leading into the tournament. I believe they had 2 games before the World Cup this year with France, and both of them they'd won. And yeah, they just ultimately could not shut down the 2 wings for France, Dembele and Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe was phenomenal. And really, really put the hurt on them with that pace, that insane power. He shoots the ball with such power. And, it was very, very tough to contain those 2. But ultimately, 2-1 is pretty damn good. And they were strong favourites heading into... I mean, I'm as biased as hell coming from Australia, but I did not think Australia would win against Denmark. I was like, okay, here comes a 1-0 win for Denmark. I can't see us scoring against this fantastic Danish defence. Just because France put 2 behind them, I didn't think it happened. But sure enough, a lot of loose passes, a lot of chances missed again. Honestly, probably played better than Australia overall, but Australia got that one brilliant goal, and I was very happy, but ultimately very disappointed in Denmark. Probably one of the more disappointing tournaments they've ever had in World Cup history. That was not great. And for a team who honestly got a great group draw and should have gone through the top 16, they went home very early and ultimately very disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, and I promise we'll get to see how great some of these teams were. But yeah, we're sort of still now we're getting to the teams, you know, especially with Denmark and now number 27 as well. The teams who I thought would go through to the top 16 and could be real dark horses to make the top 4. Didn't think in a million years Morocco would, and didn't even think that Croatia would actually. I thought Croatia would be out in the round of 16. But Lord knows they almost were, but god damn. I mean, you know, 3 guarantees in life. Death, taxes, and Croatia will always win a World Cup penalty shootout. So yeah, as long as penalty shootouts are a thing in football, it's going to be very hard to knock Croatia out of the World Cup. But back to another Eastern European side who are much more disappointing than Croatia, unfortunately. Serbia. That first game with Brazil, I was like, man, if they put Mitrovic and Vlahovic up front and they go all out attack, this game is going to be amazing. It's going to be like a dozen goals. It's going to be fantastic. But Serbia went all out defensive against Brazil. And honestly, they were really physical, really aggressive, and really strong in the first 20 minutes. But eventually, Brazil's class just took over. And eventually, just the strategy from Serbia, it did baffle you. I mean, granted, they still probably wouldn't have won. It is Brazil, and Brazil were, you know, as great as Serbia have with their attacking talent. I mean, Brazil have that little bit more, don't they? But yeah, I mean, they had, you know, 5 defenders at the back, only the one striker in Mitrovic, and it may have been due to the injury to Dusan Vlahovic, and injuries did seem to hamper Serbia a little bit through the tournament as well. But yeah, even the defenders, when they got the ball, they'd try to dribble out, of danger rather than just clearing the ball and passing straight to the midfield. And yeah, just did not work with the Brazilians. And obviously, eventually the Brazilians got their goals. But again, a game that could have easily been a lot higher of a score. And especially when you saw the next two games. And honestly, Serbia, I think then they relaxed it a little bit and they went, okay, let's embrace our offense. Let's just assume we are going to concede some goals, but let's just try and score more than the opposition. But they didn't do enough to get through. They scored plenty of goals in the next two games, but including the third goal against Cameroon. Oh, that was lovely. These wonderful touches and interplay between the Serbians, and then leading to Mitrovic getting the easiest finish maybe of the entire tournament. To score the third goal against Cameroon. But yeah, ultimately that leaky defence, it really did cost them. And when you're conceding, all due respect to Switzerland. Switzerland are a very solid team, defensively really strong. But if you have as much talent as Serbia and you're letting in 3 goals against Switzerland to ultimately lose the game, yeah, there's something wrong. And I think that's something that desperately needs to be worked on. So overall, a bit disappointing from Serbia. Flashes of absolute brilliance, but yeah, in the end, 27 I think is pretty fitting. And again, I was surprised when at the end of the day they only had 1 point. I was like, oh man, that's... Again, I think Group G was a tough group as well, but yeah, they should have gone through. I really think they should have gone through. But teams who shouldn't have gone through, Belgium. What on earth was that? I think probably the most disappointing team in the tournament was Belgium, and the fact that they should be lower. I hate the fact they even came in at number 26 on this list. It's out of all the teams who seem to put zero effort in, it seemed to be them. Everyone seemed to play hard. We even talked about Serbia. Underperformed a little bit, but they had flashes of brilliance, and they just don't have the class in defense. But I'll tell you what, Belgium do. They've got the class everywhere. And De Bruyne was very disappointing. And it wouldn't shock me at all if De Bruyne gets back into a Man City jersey and tears it up again and is absolutely phenomenal. I think De Bruyne, honestly, he really missed having Erling Haaland to pass to and all these other wonderful, talented players around him. And, he still had wonderful, talented players, not quite to that level, but it's just... Yeah, Thibaut Courtois was good. He really kept them in the game against Canada. But ultimately then against Morocco, it was a mistake from him that, broke the deadlock. And that was one of those games where it was very satisfying. It's like, dude, one team wanted it more. And the one thing Morocco really did well in this tournament of many things was they wanted it more than practically anyone else they played. And ultimately, that really gave them the win over Belgium. And after an opening game where they didn't deserve to win, really. They got very fortunate. Davies, Davies does that penalty again. He could have easily scored against Courtois. But yeah, and then the final game... We know what happened. I think people are a little bit harsh on Romelu Lukaku. He's a guy who served his country really well. He's a phenomenal striker. Was a phenomenal striker. And I respect the fact they played him and just went, you know what? Go give him hell, Lukaku. Let's see what we can do. And granted, very good. Livakovic has really shown how strong he is in goals through the tournament. He was... he's really done his... of all the players, probably one of the 10 players in the whole tournament who has increased his reputation more than anyone else. But Lukaku really should have scored in that game. Against Croatia too. They made the chances, which is really impressive. The last 20 minutes, they went really hard. They were hammering Croatia's goal, always in the box. But yeah, Croatia would not let them score, and Belgium, did their best to sabotage themselves as much as possible in that game. But ultimately it's Belgium actually did get very close to going through, and given how much heart and passion and effort and just that Croatia and Morocco put into this tournament, including in the group stage, I'm so relieved that Belgium didn't get through in that group because they did not deserve it. Frankly, if Canada had qualified, I'd have been stoked too. I think Canada really went hard, and hurts my soul a little bit that Canada are lower than Belgium on this list. But yeah, maybe the final game, they had their chances. It might have been easily just karma for the first game where they really shouldn't have won, and Canada had all the chances and just couldn't finish, and Belgium got that one great chance and scored, and yeah, I'm glad there's some karma in football, and sounds horrible to say, I'm glad Belgium did not make it out of Group F. But speaking of teams who did deserve to go through, oh my gosh. One of my favourite games of the tournament, I think one of everyone's favourite games of the tournament, and this is a game which really kicked off and made people really start to pay attention to like, oh wow, this could be a really good World Cup. Saudi Arabia, who looked really unlucky to be in their group. It was a tough group, Group C. Little did we know that Argentina were thinking, sorry guys, you're unlucky to be stuck with us in the group stage. But really, Argentina were unlucky to get stuck with Saudi Arabia. They really turned up in that first game. And we'll get to, obviously, I think they were great against Poland as well. Disappointing against Mexico, that I'll give it that. And I think a Mexican team who peaked in the last game, I think they were much improved, and Saudi kind of dropped off a bit in that final game. But my gosh, in that first game, I mean, you see the anthems, and Argentina always scream their anthem with lots of passion, and there's loads of Argentinians in the crowd, and it's like, here we go. What's it going to be? 3-4, 5-0? Like, we're going to see Messi and his group of, honestly, at the time, kind of favourites for the tournament, along with, Brazil, maybe France. But yeah, my gosh. Then Saudi Arabia sing their anthem, and they're just as loud. And they seem to have even more supporters. I think every single Saudi Arabian just turned up to Qatar. My God, and just filled that stadium. And then they just look so calm. They look so laser focused. And then it begins, and all of a sudden Messi rips through this shot. Phenomenal shot. And you're just like, okay, here's the first goal. Messi's kind of kicked things off for Argentina. And the Saudi goalkeeper saves it. And you're like, oh wow, that's them planting their flag in the ground. And they're like, nah. We're in this game, we're turning up, and we're not going to let you guys run away with this. And my God, it was epic. And then a few minutes later, softest penalty you've ever seen. And yeah, Messi steps up, scores a penalty, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that was nice. That was a good save, I guess now we're going to see the floodgates open. But they didn't. Argentina kept on sending long balls through, kept on sending crosses through. And yeah, the Saudi defense, they would not break. And then they broke, but it was offside. And it's like, oh, okay, well, Argentina got a bit unlucky there, but then it happened again. Martinez again scores and again was offside, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this isn't by accident. These guys have been that well drilled by a phenomenal coach in Hervé Renard, who we'll get to a bit later on. This is not accidental. They are literally totally screwing with Lautaro Martinez. And it would be the beginning of, Argentina would obviously recover as the World Cup went on. Unfortunately, Martinez would not. And yeah, Saudis they played out of their skin. Mohamed Kunu, sorry, I'm getting mixed up with another great player from this tournament who we'll get to later on. Mohamed Kano, oh my gosh, fought for every ball in that midfield. And passed really well as well. And this, I think, was the key for Saudi Arabia. I mean, a lot has been meant for their height advantage in the box, and Argentina just trying to send long balls through constantly to their strikers, and constantly being intercepted or beaten in the air by the Saudi defenders. But ultimately, I think the weakness of the Argentinian midfield really showed here, and how good. I mean, Al Malki as well. Like, him and Kano, phenomenal. Al Malki just... Every blade of grass on that pinch, Al Malki ran over. Like, he was all over the place. Like, talk about a box-to-box midfielder. I mean, he's a corner-to-corner to opposite corner-to-opposite corner midfielder. Yeah, phenomenal performance. And then, of course, Messi loses the ball, and it leads to a Saudi goal. And it's like, oh my gosh, they've leveled it up. And then an absolute screamer from Al Basari, and we ended up getting a 2-1, and they managed to hang on. Al Sharani as well, the fullback, gets knocked out and then taken off on a stretcher, and then just like an action movie where like the buddy who is like getting taken to the hospital after breaking his leg or something in the football game, gives like the thumbs up as he leaves the field. And Al Sharani did that to the rest of his team as well. Oh my gosh, just epic, absolutely epic. Yeah, Hervé Renard, again, in the post-match interviews, he was talking about, how again, the Saudis, they should just be so proud of this game. We're not going to focus too much on Poland and Mexico now. We're just going to celebrate this tonight. We're just going to celebrate this great day in Saudi Arabian football. And just a really fun day for Saudi Arabia in general. They all got a day off after that. So, and the king of Saudi Arabia bought them all Rolls Royces as well. So now it's like, oh my god, if we make it through to round 16, imagine we're going to get a new house. Like, and there's one thing the Saudi royal family is not lacking is money. So they'd be more than happy to splash it out. And I think that's almost a key. Is like if you can play for any national team in the world. I don't know how many World Cup winners have ever gotten Rolls Royces bought for them after they've won a World Cup. But just opening game win against the World Cup, well, one of the World Cup favourites, and you get a Rolls Royce each. Absolutely phenomenal. What a performance from Saudi Arabia. And of course, Hervé Renard, he'd even make these speeches that were not in. I think he'd give the speeches in English, and then they'd translate it into Arabic for the Saudi Arabian players. So his translator is translating these incredible, Braveheart-like speeches to the players. It's fantastic. And Reynard is screaming at them, but he's screaming really positive things. It's just, I love it. Love that story. One of my favourite games of the tournament. Probably my second favourite game of the whole tournament, actually. And even if you had just told me that early on in the tournament, I would have been like, oh, this could still be a great World Cup, even if all but one of the other games matches it for, just drama. And what a fantastic game. Saudis came out really well against Poland as well, especially early on. They went really hard, but I'll tell you what, Szczesny in goals was phenomenal, and we'll get to him a bit later on. Honestly, one of the best keepers in the whole tournament. Even though Poland ultimately didn't last that long in the tournament, they didn't stick around that long, but absolutely fantastic. Saved a penalty against the Saudis as well. So Saudi Arabia, a bit like Canada against Belgium, got kind of unlucky not to be able to score in that game. And ultimately then against Mexico, you saw a few defensive mistakes against the Polish team, but overall, still a really positive performance. They were still creating a lot of attacking opportunities. Against Mexico, it all fell apart. Could have easily been a lot more higher than 2-0, and that's why Saudi, rank back here at number 25, when they easily could have been a lot higher, and easily could have actually qualified as well. Ultimately, Saudi Arabia's 2022 World Cup, I think they can hold their head really high. I really didn't rate them very highly. I absolutely predicted they would get 0 points out of Group C. And the fact they beat Argentina. I'd love to meet the person who bet any money on Saudi Arabia to beat Argentina, because I bet they were, they could have gone out and bought their own Rolls Royce with that money as well. What a performance. And they should all, again, like Hervé Renard said, they should be really proud of that one performance. And frankly, they would be one of the teams who experienced one of the greatest highs in the whole tournament. So they should be very happy. And that kicks off this first part of the series. We'll go 8 teams at a time. So this will be part 1 of 4. And very happy to end it on a really positive note with Saudi Arabia when a lot of them weren't that positive. Belgium and Denmark, what the hell were you doing? Seriously. But ultimately, feel free to feel free to subscribe, share with your friends, and let's talk more football as we get kicked off building this community. Kicked off, terrible pun. Do not apologise for it. We'll see you guys soon in the next video. Bye.